Good evening, and welcome to this regular meeting of the Northside Board of Trustees. Before calling this meeting to order, the board would like to take just a moment to briefly review some of the rules for conducting our meeting. The order of business for this meeting is set out in the agenda. One item that you may notice on the agenda is the consent agenda. This item includes items that are considered routine and/or are of a recurring nature. All the items listed under the consent agenda will be acted upon in one motion. If there is a consent agenda item which anyone here would like to address, please sign up to speak to that item and we will pull it from the consent motion and discuss it separately. The purpose of our meeting is to conduct board business, and for that reason it is held in public. It is not a public forum. However, we do provide the opportunity for audience participation. If there is anyone who would like to address the board during an agenda item or citizens to be heard portion of the agenda, we ask that you please register on the sign-up sheet located at the entrance to this room. This is so we do not overlook anyone who would like to speak to the board. We will review the rules for addressing the board later in the meeting. Is there anyone here who would like to sign up to an agenda item and has not done so? Okay. The meeting will then be officially called to order. Please stand and bow your heads as Trustee Gerald Lopez leads us in the invocation and pledges of allegiance.
Almighty and merciful God, we ask your guidance and blessings upon this board, students, parents, patrons, teachers, and administrators as we are assembled here this evening in the common pursuit of this great nation's wealth, our children. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you, Mr. Lopez. It's nice to have a full house today. First item on the agenda is Dr. Woods.
Yes, ma'am. Several items to report tonight. I'll try to keep it brief. I know we've got recognition, and I know these are busy kids with AP tests and so forth coming up, but this is also a really busy time of the year. As the board is well aware, in the last month, cabinet members and I have done literally hundreds of information presentations regarding our bond proposal to staff and parents and community groups. As a reminder to the group, early voting has begun. It runs through May the 3rd, and Election Day is actually May the 7th. Speaking of bond projects, we recently had a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the new Law and Medical Services Magnet School that obviously is located at Marshall High School. I want to thank LMS Principal Margaret Bray and Marshall High School Principal Susan Cleveland for what I thought was a really nice celebration and the ability to walk around with the students of LMS and really get a tour of the programs and all of the things that they're learning there. Also, in the last month, I've been able to attend robotics and esports and, of course, fine arts events. The highlight of those fine arts events for me is Los Leones, and I thank members of the board who were able to be there that day as well. That is our partnership with the City of Leon Valley that showcases the business of fine arts. And at that event, you see visual art, but you also see lots of performing groups, and it is just a real highlight and really a nice event for the community. Similar was last weekend's Art Fest, which gives the other half of our school's fine arts programs the opportunity to showcase their talented students as well. We obviously also enjoyed our elementary and secondary Educator of the Year events. It was nice to have full crowds in an auditorium to celebrate those educators as it should be. Recently, I was asked to a meeting with Speaker Phelan's staff to discuss some issues related to public schools regarding the 88th session. I'll say it was a productive conversation. I felt like we found a fair amount of common ground to discuss, and so I'm hopeful about that. Very recently, Erica Olivares, who is the principal of the soon-to-be-open CAS Teach, which obviously will serve to grow the next generation of teachers, and I had a chance to preview our ideas for Commissioner Morath and some of his staff. And his comment to us at the end of our presentation was, well, we just need 100 more of these around the state. And I said, yeah, I don't know if even 100 would do it. But yeah, we definitely need a lot more effort across our state to grow the next generation of talented educators. Finally, last Saturday, we successfully ran our solar car event. And it had also been a little while since we were able to do that. It was really nice to be racing again, have such a large number of teams and members in the audience. Thanks to our C&I team, especially the science group, Janice, as always, their efforts in that. Our partnership with the U.S. Air Force, and of course, Mr. Blunt, who is not yet here to hear me thank him for that, but it is his, that was in large part his vision, and it's his energy that keeps that such a successful program. Ms. Freeman and members, we do not have a video moment tonight, as we have one associated with a recognition, and we'll show that as we get to that item here in just a few minutes. And that concludes Superintendent's report.
Well, thank you, Dr. Woods. Actually, recognitions is next on the agenda.
Board member reports.
Oh, I'm sorry. Board member reports. Anyone? Either that or my lights aren't working. Ms. Chumley?
So I had the great fortune to read to two classes at Carnahan, Ms. Anderson's and Ms. Pettis pre-K classes. And I was so worried about what to read to kids that age. But I found a Dr. Seuss book that made noises. It was about making, and so the kids clomped their feet and made noises. Anyway, it was great fun. And those are two amazing teachers too. Just, I mean, that is, I think, would be a really tough age. I'm trying to think back to when I had my own at that age, but I just wanted to thank them. And I ran into Peggy Carnahan there as well, and it was really great to see her. And it was also the shoebox parade for Fiesta, which was so much fun. They put a lot of, the kids put a lot of effort into it. Anyway, I just wanted to say thanks, because that was a really wonderful event and a lot of fun. I wanted to add my thanks too to Margaret Bray and Susan Cleveland and our hospitality group as well. I thought that the ribbon cutting was really done well, and the campus looked great, and it was just nice. Oh, my mic's not on? Okay. And it was just really nice to see the cooperation between Marshall and LMS for that event. I thought that was really nicely done, and the kids speaking and talking about how LMS has impacted them. I thought that really added to it as well. And Brian, you just said something, and it made me think there was something I was missing. I need to go back. Oh, I know what it was, is the hospitality at John Jay. Linda Dalton and her group for the bond presentation that was done, the media bond presentation. John Jay showed their hospitality off, and I thought the kids did a really good job, and it was really pretty healthy food too, which was kind of neat too. And then I got a chance at that time too to look at the other CTE areas, and also Sergeant Major showed me the ROTC, and they had a senior and a freshman that did a short drill presentation for me. I didn't realize how heavy those rifles are. They're like 8 pounds. I mean, they were heavy. And so you had the senior, and he was tossing it and throwing it in the air, and it just really great. And then you had this freshman who was, typical freshman, kind of skinny little guy, but he did the same things. He was great, so he's well on his way. But it was just really neat. And I remember years ago when we used to go, and they would do a presentation, and the board would go for their ROTC drill teams with the guns. And they're just, that whole program is just amazing. So that was really enjoyable. Always want to thank Bobby for solar cars. He was the driving force with that. And just look at where it's come, from where it started to where it is right now. Just phenomenal. Art Fest, I heard some great remarks from people in the community that went to Art Fest on Saturday. And then I wanted to thank Partnerships for their recognition that night. I thought that went really well, and I was very appreciative of that as well. And then I've got a shout out, Monica, I want to make sure, Chris Trejo in our IT area. I had needed some assistance at one of our schools, and Chris, I mean, stepped up.
He's actually in the hallway.
He's
He
waiting
is.
in the hallway.
There you are.
Smiling. He's
There you
smiling.
are. Well, I'm bragging on you. He was wonderful and went, you know, he coordinated with other areas within the school district to make sure that things were taken care of. And I just really, Chris, thank you so much. I really appreciated your assistance. It made a huge difference. And Leroy and Jacob as well. Thank y'all for taking care of that and helping take care of that. I really appreciated that as well. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Harrell.
Sorry, I was staring at the medals. It's always wonderful having students in our boardroom, especially with the coolest medals. I can't wait to applaud you for your hard work and your rewards. So hopefully, you know, on behalf of our board, we're so proud of you. So keep it up. I do want to just piggyback on Dr. Woods and Ms. Chumley's remarks about LMS ribbon cutting. So my big deal is I always have to go in and talk to the students, and it was so hard to go do the formal part of that, you know, where we sit and we do speeches and we talk in adult language because the kids were so adult in the way that they look at their future and how much this is giving them a leg up. And even so much so to actually wearing the uniforms that they would wear, the rigorous training that they have. The courtroom is nicer than any courtroom that I've ever seen through my own wife of a judge. They're usually doom and gloomy and brown and smelly and awful, and they're not meant to be fun places, right? Anyway, but this was a very joyful place to be that day and or that evening, and I had my grandkids with me, and they loved it too. They loved the cupcakes the best, but certainly enjoyed the students talking to them in a kindergarten and second grade way, bending down or squatting down to talk to them eye to eye. You can't teach that kind of stuff. That comes from the heart. So big shout out to the students there. I want to do a personal thanks to Corinne because she went and judged an Arbor Day art for me at the last minute. I couldn't do it, and at the last minute she agreed, and it was Pat Blattman students, and they were headstrong on saving trees, and so what better person to take my place than Corinne, so thank you very, very much for that. Today I had the real privilege and pleasure of hearing Erica Olivares, who Dr. Woods was kind of bragging on, the new principal at Cass Teach, talk to a witty ballroom full, Witty Museum ballroom full of educators and business leaders and community leaders today. And oh my gosh, she wowed the entire panel. Her focus on student agency, family agency, student involvement, family involvement. You don't make up that stuff. She almost has enough students to count for a full house. I think she's at 115 students, and the goal was to have 125, which she'll make. But one of the happiest stories was she was sharing she got 2 more student applications this morning, and she goes, I was just, a little bit at a time, right, Carol? And so, and she said she opened one up, and it was her son applying, her 8th grade son. So, as a mom educator, grandma educator, I think that's also icing on the cake when your own applies. Solar cars, I was at Rayburn when we started it on the tennis courts. So I hated to miss Saturday, but we had another family event. But congratulations to Bobby and the schools that participate in solar cars, because in the beginning it was three teams of students that we didn't want to play tennis. Really, we were just trying to find other ways to involve them after school. And Bobby's company, Miter, was right down the street from Rayburn, and just, showed up and paid for everything and cleared the way with Lackland. I think we started out with rockets, and then we went to solar cars, right? We started out with rockets? It's parallel. Oh, at the same time. And then when 9/11 hit, we had to stop the rockets because obviously that wasn't good. But solar cars kept going, and just full house. So congratulations. I didn't see you sneak in, Bobby, but thank you very, very much. I think that was the first one I've missed in a while. Judging. One other thing. So we have two teachers and a principal. Lacey Greco at Leon Springs Elementary. Is it Josie Garay? Josie Garay, a STEM teacher at Valley High Elementary, and Dr. Lisa Baker, who's principal at Communication Arts. They're up for the Excellence in Education Award. They are statewide finalists, which I one of these days I'm going to find out how many actually make it to start out in the original pot and then make it to the finals. But I get to go judge on Friday and Saturday, so keep your fingers crossed. Think good thoughts that Northside again will be recognized for the incredible excellence in education that we have here. To me personally, when a teacher wins from Northside, it's a win for all our teachers. When a principal wins, it's a win for all our administrators. When anyone wins from Northside, it's for Northside. So I can't wait to see them, and it's going to be a great evening. Yay. But thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harrell. Ms. Saldana.
Yes, I ditto almost everything that has already been said, so I'm not going to repeat it. But I do have one more event that I went to at Rudder Middle School last week. They had their family night, and it was so much fun. They had food trucks, they had entertainment. You went to all the different sections. It was around the world, so I took a tour around the world last week, and it was incredible. So to Principal Paul Ramirez and his staff, they did an incredible job, and to all the families who were there enjoying seeing what their kids are doing in classes. It was really an awesome visit, so I recognize them.
Thank you, Ms. Saldana. Mr. Lopez?
Thank you. I only had an opportunity to attend one event, but and that event was the Northside Fine Arts event, and it really, I was really impressed with a lot of the artwork. And this is the event where Los Leones, it's almost like a continuation of Los Leones, because the high schools and middle schools and elementary schools that participate in Los Leones are in one section, and then we've got the ones that didn't participate in Los Leones come and they participate in this event. And so it was really good to see the work and the artwork, as well as our fine arts dance and our fine arts dance program starting in our middle schools. That has really grown, and it has really matured, and seeing some of our younger students dancing and performing all kinds of music, as well as seeing the high school students dancing and seeing the maturity of those levels of dancers. So that was really great to see, and it was really exciting. And for me, it was more of a sense of, hey, we are growing, and the fine arts dance is growing, and we got to continue that growth and encourage that. So that was one of the only things I was able to attend this weekend. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. And Mr. Blunt? I wasn't gonna let you get away with that.
No, just,
Go ahead.
no, just real quick. I'll probably get in trouble for this one, but it's interesting. Electric cars are real light. It's just amazing to see a non-electric car have more damage than my electric car. When you have sorry, I had a little bit of accident coming over here, but I made it. Okay.
We're sorry about that.
All right, we'll be all right. But thanks everybody for I understand there's a lot of conversation on the solar car. I just want to pass on one thing about the solar cars. Definitely thanking our science, elementary and middle science team, without a doubt, and all the other volunteers and teachers that work with students on a very frequent basis to make them successful, and the other volunteers that were there too. But the most amazing thing I want to point out, and I think Dr. Woods knows this one all too well too, as well everybody else, is those volunteers down there, they have they go through a lot of stress, and part of it is because they care so much for the kids. And there's a lot of things that go wrong in those races down there, and they just want to help out as much as they can, and that puts even more stress than what we realize with them saying, I just want this kid to be successful. So I just wanted to pass that on, and thank you all for your remarks also.
Yeah, and congratulations. This was the 25th year of solar cars, is that correct? Okay, and to my fellow board members and the community here, Trustee Joseph Medina will be delayed. You might see him coming in at some point in time. Y'all know that he is a administrator at Southwest ISD, and he got tied up with some things or an event that happened at his school that he's makes him delayed in coming, but he'll be just walking in sometime during our meeting. Y'all have heard all the energy up here this evening. It's so great to hear that. We've had such an opportunity to recognize our students and our teachers, our Educators of the Year celebration, and a couple things I want to add. And I was just sitting here looking for details. I don't have them all, but our Northside Education Foundation is sponsoring a 5K run walk. Did you mention that in your remarks, Dr. Woods? A 5K walk this coming Saturday. So it's still not too late to register. You can go online and register. It's a lot of fun. It starts at O'Connor High School. It precedes the Carnival Parade, certainly a fundraiser for the foundation. And I know that there's some competitions with some of our schools, but look forward to that. And then I guess it's the week after that, we have Tiny Homes, the Tiny Homes show on Saturday. Please put that on your calendar. That's another program that we have in Northside where our kids actually learn construction trades. And we all know that that's extremely important right now. These kids come out with certifications that if they wanted to, they could go right from high school into a career, or they use that, they work in that particular field so that they could earn money so that they can attend college. So either way, it gives them a real head start. And the tiny homes are just wonderful. It's at Warren High School. Look on our website, check that out, and please consider going. Okay, so at this time, we do have recognitions. And let's go down here, and I cannot believe the size of this trophy. This one right here.
We have to raise Bobby's budget.
I know it.
It's gorgeous.
Good evening, Dr. Woods, Board of Trustees. I'm Janice Jordan, Deputy Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. Tonight, it is my honor to introduce some high school students, along with their teachers, who can truly say that they have hit the highest note in the world of string music. These students and their directors were named the grand champions at the National Orchestra Cup, so they are literally the best high school orchestra in the nation. And at this time, we would like reporter Marvin Hurst from KENS 5 to tell you their story.
Okay, we're going to do this one more time.
The orchestra at Brandeis High School is having a year of dynamics.
I think it starts and ends with music.
From practice to performance.
The kids have a passion for it. We all have a passion for it.
Intention crescendos to excellence.
The harder you work at something, the more you invest in something, the more you're going to get out of it.
Their payoff started with a trip to play at Lincoln Center in New York for the National Cup Orchestra. The invitation-only competition is for premier student musicians.
This was our showstopper piece. This was going to be the one that, blew the crowd away.
And their showstopper, complex and virtuosic.
We had a performance in January.
almost didn't make the cut.
It didn't go very well.
We could get together as sections and as individuals, but when we came together as a group, it was really tough to communicate across the orchestra.
So these musicians leaned in, persevered, counting on skill and chemistry.
Because we're so close, like, music is very intimate.
And what could be more intimate than playing under your father?
I feel like I've gotten closer to him through orchestra and through music.
But there's no special treatment for a son who walked away with a soloist award at the national competition.
It was one of the highlights of my high school experience.
He wasn't the only one who strung his way to victory.
The individual award seemed like, nice, at least I got this, and I really hope we win.
That hope was just an announcement away.
The 2022 National Orchestra champions are Brandeis.
The hardware now sits in their rehearsal hall, naming Brandeis as the best high school orchestra in the country. While the victory is satisfying.
One of the really great things as a director in high school is you get to really cultivate relationships with students.
Members score their journey and relationships higher than the award.
It feels underwhelming because we put in so much work at school, and that's like the real rewarding part, like knowing we worked really hard. This is probably the last time that you're going to play this with this orchestra, so think of it that way.
So the season closes with a dynamic outcome.
I'm very appreciative of what I've had these past 13 years, and I'm hopeful that the kids have taken a lot from it and that they will grow from it in the future.
But the music of team will play on in their hearts. Marvin Hurst, KENS 5.
So due to space restrictions, we didn't feel that we could bring the entire orchestra here today. So we asked Director Kevin Garcia Hedinger to bring a few of the key students with him tonight. On May 24th, at their spring orchestra concert, all orchestra members will receive a board recognition certificate in recognition of this tremendous achievement. That happens to be the night of a board meeting, so Dr. Jerry Woods will be in attendance, and he will represent you as the board and Dr. Woods. So at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce these outstanding students as they come forward. And what you'll do is you'll hand me the card, I'll read your name, then you'll walk over to Miss Chumley, shake their hand down this line. Thank you. Mia Chanelli. Aiden Woods. Vincent Garcia Hedinger. Jasmine Stores. Mercedes Stratton. Aaron Valerio. Ray Zhang. Ronald Zhu. Kevin Garcia Hedinger. Olga De Leon. And if we have any family or friends here tonight, here for these students, if you'll please stand so we can recognize you. Yes, of the students. Yeah, so if you were just recognized, if you'll please come back, kind of squeeze in tight so we can get a picture. Yes. always feel like Wonder Woman, because she had everything she had was clear, right?
Oh, yay! Congratulations to you too.
And this concludes the recognitions. They took my podium, so I had to come sit down. Very cool.
Of course, we gotta do a little engineering while we're there, so.
Those of y'all that are standing, you're welcome to come in and sit down. Okay. Next item on the agenda is citizens to be heard. And while, Gerald, can you do the honors, please? We believe citizens to be heard is important and meaningful, and we will listen to what you have to say. We value your opinions, although we are restrained by law from taking any action. We ask that you address your remarks to the board, confine your remarks to a Northside policy or practice, limit your remarks to 3 minutes. At 3 minutes, you will be asked to wrap up your remarks. And at 2 minutes, Mr. Lopez will show you a yellow card so that you know you've got 1 minute left and it's time to wrap that up. And Mr. Lopez, if you could hold it up, because sometimes people are looking down and they're not seeing it. Well, when they're reading, when they're making remarks. And we ask that you don't make personal attacks on individuals. Okay, ready to begin.
Asinth Medina.
Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Woods. I am Asenet Medina. I'm treasurer of Northside ISD, excuse me, NAFT, but I'm also a proud staff member at NISD. I am a classroom teacher. I'm going to be reading the first portion of a resolution for consideration from Northside AFT. Whereas 66% of Texas AFT members told us on a recent survey they were considering leaving the profession, whereas according to a national NEA poll, more than half of teachers are looking for an exit strategy from the profession, whereas according to government data from the IES National Center for Education Statistics, nearly 1 in 3 teachers said COVID-19 had made them more likely to resign or retire early. Whereas, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, there were approximately 10.6 million educators working in public education in January 2020. Today, there are just 10.0 million, with a net loss of around 600,000. Whereas, according to a recent Raise Your Hand Texas poll, 71% of participants state teachers are undervalued, 70% of Texans and 61% nationwide trust teachers, and 70% state teachers are underpaid. Whereas according to a recent Raise Your Hand Texas poll, this with the same poll, 70% of the public reported trust and confidence in teachers. Whereas according to a 2020 Raise Your Hand Texas poll, 93% of teachers identify their highest job pressure as test pressure, followed by discipline issues at 90%, large class sizes at 85%, and too many administrative burdens placed upon them at 84%. Whereas according to 2019 data from the OECD Corporate Cooperation and Development, teachers in the U.S. spend 200 to 300 hours more in instructional time per year than the average OECD countries, but having less planning time. Whereas teachers need time to prepare materials and lessons that best meet the needs of their students, collaborate with their fellow educators, grade student work, analyze student learning data, reach out to parents, and many other teaching-related duties. Whereas both the Kaiser Family Foundation and the CDC have reported that the pandemic has resulted in serious negative impacts on children's mental health, which has also translated to challenging student behaviors at school. Whereas Governor Greg Abbott has directed the Texas Education Agency to create a task force to examine the state teacher shortage problem. For your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wanda Longoria.
Whereas the teaching profession in our country, our state, and our district is in crisis, and the Northside AFT Executive Board has passed the following resolution and asked the NISD School Board to adopt it as well. Be it therefore resolved that Northside ISD ensures teachers all across the district receive their state-mandated planning and preparation period and state-mandated duty-free lunch to afford teachers balance and time to do their jobs at their optimum level. Resolved that NISD will actively engage educators in discussions and implementation of policies to reduce workload, reduce redundancy in data collection, enhance district supports for the classroom, reduce stress, and offer more transparent and inclusive spaces for employee input to assist in retaining quality employees. Resolved that Northside ISD will engage with Northside AFT to collaboratively address excessive testing, student behavior, class sizes, special education supports, and extra administrative burdens placed by some campuses. Resolved that NISD review their budget and prioritize ways to better address employee pay, more instructional support in the classroom, hiring more social workers and counselors who will be able to assist with student behavioral concerns. Resolved that NISD will acknowledge the very real challenges their employees on the front line experience daily and be willing to offer sensitivity training for management, supervisors, and administrators as a way to address the teacher and employee shortage currently experienced in the district. Be it resolved that Northside ISD will allow for open nominations from community members to all district committees from the communities that they serve, in addition to administrative or school board nominations, i.e. NCN, Northside Educational Improvement Council, and other district advisory committees, and will also allow nominations from employees who, as frontline workers, experience daily challenges that perhaps administrators and school board members may not be aware of. The Executive Board of Northside AFT asks the Board to consider adopting this resolution as one crucial step in the process of attracting and retaining quality employees to NISD during this time of crisis in education. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
William Thomas.
Good evening, school board members. My name is Bill Thomas. I'm an AFT member and proud to be a Northside teacher for 18 years now. Hard to believe. You know why I'm here: to advocate for better working conditions for all and to do what's best for our students. I've just come from voting on the bond issue. It has my support, but I think hearing from the community, it might be a tough sell just from what I'm hearing. But right now, it's finding the money to raise salaries for teachers and staff. You may be aware of teacher shortages across the country. The Texas Workforce Commission estimates that teacher openings in Texas alone will increase by 11% through the year 2018. I know we have several positions open at my school. That, for me, means larger class sizes and an increased workload. I urge you to consider us old pros, I count myself among them. Chances are we're the backbone of the faculty, the people who best know the students our campus draws from. We remember who to call and who to rely on, what goes where, etc., the institutional memory, if you will. Remember that usually pay scales are generous for starting teachers, but not so generous for those who have been around. According to the current NISD pay scale, my salary will go up $235 next year, okay? You may be aware of recent studies that indicate that teachers seem to reach a level of effectiveness only after several years on the job, and that increased pay for teachers of seniority is not needed. I hope that's not the case, because even more recent studies debunk those studies. You may have seen that. I think I bring a lot to the table, and I know my colleagues do as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Melina Espiritu.
My life work has been public education. My parents taught me that servicing the community is the best and most important work, and when you see something wrong, you advocate for change. Now it is my duty and responsibility to work collectively with our Northside AFT union members and stand up for the educators of this district. And it's not just for the educators and the workers, but it's for my two children, my fellow union members' children, your grandchildren, and all the children of this district. Without true change, we will lose amazing, dedicated, educated, experienced, and up-and-coming educators. We're already losing them. I want to tell you a little bit about their stories because I speak to them regularly. Sally emailed me to tell me that she was a first-year teacher who was completely unsupported and unheard. She said to me, "I have found myself in a work situation that I do not know if I can continue to work in." Her co-teacher was being pulled to cover another vacancy that occurred on her campus that would leave her totally alone with no permanent support. She wrote me and said, "Why would my campus leave a first-year special education teacher on my own completely?" And then asks, "How is that good for kids?" She goes on to tell me that they never have the number of IAs needed in her class and that the entire school year they were short-staffed. She asks, "How is this okay?" And I have no answer for her because it isn't. I help her put her concerns in writing and nothing's corrected or fixed, and she is further silenced. She tells me she doesn't think she can make it. 2 days later, she resigned. She needed to be valued and respected. Vincent calls me about being a special education teacher and always being pulled from his students to cover other classes and other responsibilities. He tells me he can't properly service his kids because he's pulled all the time. He tells me he has not had a scheduled conference or lunch most of the school year. And then when he asks about it, he's scolded. I advise him to meet with the area special education coordinator, and he does, and nothing changes. It's finally too much, and 2 weeks ago, he contacted me and asked me for support in writing a letter of resignation. His last day was a week ago. He was a fourth-year teacher. He needed his time to be honored and respected. Allison is a story of a hardworking single mother that at times worked 3 jobs to ensure she provided for her child. She's been written up for not being able to do the mandatory overtime as a custodian because she was a single mother that only had childcare for 8 hours a day. She was scared and confused and did not know what to do. She worked for this district for 2 years, and this year she just could not figure out her childcare situation, so she resigned. She needed empathy. Helen's another second-year teacher. She reached out to me asking to help navigating a situation where she was now the only one left in her department where 2 other folks she worked with had left or were on leave. She had 0 support from her admin. She was planning on her own and was expected to provide sub-plans for the vacant spots for her counterparts. She told me she could not take it anymore and planned to move back in with her family and go to grad school in something totally different than education. She told me she was totally unsupported and then held accountable when her kids struggled in her classroom. She resigned in December. She needed someone to listen. These stories cannot continue. We must do better. We must help and retain our incoming teachers and employees. This teacher shortage is real. What is the district going to do to mitigate it? A raise is not everything, but it's a step in the right direction. It's time to help the employees of NISD. Please give these folks a raise.
Courtney Pessa.
$1 billion bond for a school district is an obscene amount of money to be managed by people who have a history of not being able to manage our tax dollars. Meaning, the 30-plus-year-old schools shouldn't have become as dilapidated as you say they are through the years if the funds had been properly managed for the repairs. And speaking of where did the money go, in their own NISD published articles, Karen Freeman and Dr. Brian Woods both stated that part of the money will go to improved ventilation systems. The thing is, the COVID money that was sent to all the schools, specifically for improved ventilation systems, is now being asked for us to pay for the improved ventilation systems. Next, I want to address the sentence, "This is a property tax increase." This was put here by the Texas legislature because it is true. However, this board lacks transparency and has just told us to look the other way. It is a fact that new debt brings new taxes, no matter what this board says. Per the Public Information Act, I have documents regarding yearly proposed tax rates that were obtained. Every August, the board is told by Bear Appraisal District what our new appraisal increases will be for the coming year. And yet, NISD consistently adopts a rate that they know will increase our taxes. So for you to tell us there's no related tax increase is blatant and dishonest marketing on your part. Further, nothing that the board says about this bond is legally binding. The improvements that you've promised for each school are not binding. Example, the 2018 bond stated that it will provide, and I quote, "installation of shade structures over the playgrounds at all 97 existing elementary schools." That didn't happen. At Driggers Elementary, right here next door, ask the teachers and the children about their burned legs on the playground equipment. They don't have shade. And now NISD wants to pay for 81 sensory play areas at surrounding elementaries. Lastly, this bond is anti-family. According to NISD, there are 47 Title I schools in our district. That is to say, 46.2% of our students are economically disadvantaged. And what are these economically disadvantaged families going to do when they're taxed out of house and home and have to move out of NISD anyway? It's absolutely reckless to provide $1 billion, and it's an obscene amount of money to those who have consistently shown they cannot, or perhaps will not, properly manage our money. Vote no on this bond. Thank you.
Noah Tallarico.
Superintendent, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Noah Tallarico. I'm a proud Northside teacher, a resident and a parent. I'm a former Army officer and an AFT member. I would like to start by thanking the board for demonstrating respect to teachers and staff members for their contributions during a very difficult time in education by passing a retention bonus for current employees and for compensating elementary school teachers for their intensive state-mandated training. You didn't have to do any of these things, but you did it, and it was greatly appreciated by teachers and staff. My purpose in speaking today is simple, and I will be brief. Throughout my career, I've learned a lot about resolving conflict. As a middle school teacher in particular, managing conflict is a regular part of my job. You know it. Whether it's a student disrupting the classroom environment or acting belligerently, I'm usually faced with two options: shut it down or resolve it. One way yields short-term benefits and the other long-term. Over the years, I've tried my best to cultivate an approach that can be summed up in 3 words: seek to understand. When I pull a student aside, I often start with a very simple question: what's going on? Now, that conversation can go in a million different directions, but the act of reaching out to a student and asking them what's the matter, rather than shutting them down up front with a lecture or referral, goes a long way towards building a rapport with the student. It's often said that students rarely remember what they learned in our classes, but they almost always remember how we made them feel. This is true in life, and in our hyperpolarized society, the need to listen to one another is more important than ever. The need to give a voice to those seeking it is immeasurably necessary, not because we will always agree, but because when we start by seeking to understand one another, we come closer to finding that valuable real estate we call common ground. I would like to encourage the board, the superintendent, and pertinent administrative personnel to give the AFT, which represents over 15% of teachers at Northside, a voice by allowing them a forum to openly share teachers' concerns, hear out solutions to common problems, and sometimes the act of listening alone can make all the difference in the world. In closing, I want to say that I strongly support Northside's bond. I know it'll make a difference in the lives of the students we serve, and I want to encourage citizens and staff members to vote. Thank you.
Jamie Garcia.
Good evening. Sorry. When I started in Northside 16 years ago, it was the destination district. The competition to be hired for Northside was strong, and a teacher could be proud to say they were hired by Northside. With the current employment situation where it is, there's no longer that competition. There are not enough candidates for the open positions we have. We are short-staffed in every corner of every building every day. Your employees are tired, overworked, and stressed. Don't believe me? Check the results of the Panorama survey that was piloted on many campuses across the district. The scores will tell you the same story. Our contract day was made longer for student achievement. Were we compensated for our time? No. Are you tired of hearing that? I'm sure you are. Will we forget it though? No. This is just one more time that we have felt disrespected as professionals. Want to impact student achievement? Lower the class sizes, continue monthly early release days, and pay us what we are worth. Your teachers are simply the best, right? A quote directly from the Teacher of Year celebrations. Treat us like we are. Pay us like the educated professionals we are. Instructional assistants are one of the most difficult positions we have to hire for. These staff work with our most fragile and most challenging students. Students who are in diapers, students who need spoon feeding, constant supervision, students who run, hit, bite, spit every day. These adults do some of the hardest work for our students, and yet we don't pay them respectably. Every year we hear the same thing about our wages being competitive with the area. NISD, I looked on the job postings, tops out at about $13 an hour. NEISD tops out at $15, Southwest and SAISD both top out at $20 an hour. And now we have the buzz around Pflugerville and Round Rock, who will both be starting at $15 an hour, starting $15 an hour next year. Our $13 an hour does not sound competitive to me. We can't hire good IAs or retain good IAs when they can go to a fast food restaurant or retail store with fewer responsibilities and less stress and make more money. What happened to the destination district we were all proud of? I've been with this district long enough to read the writing on the walls, or rather the words in Dr. Woods' weekly, where he says several times already there will be budget shortfalls and even greater gaps if the bond doesn't pass. He's trying to prepare all of us for there not being any raises this year. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics issued a report at the end of March that says over the last 12 months, the cost of all items, not including food energy, has gone up 9.1%, and the cost of food has risen 8.6%. BCAD reports single-family home appraisals are up an average of 27.8%. I personally will be paying almost $4,000 more in property taxes next year. You are asking for a huge bond right now because of the cost of maintaining aging schools has increased, the cost of living has increased, and yet we can't be respected enough to have a raise to offset those rising costs. And that is simply not the best. Thank you.
Massimo Lacandro.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Massimo Licandro. I actually would like to share my experience. I used to be a teacher on the North Side until 2020. And then actually we tied up what they said. I just got tired. 15 years of experience. I was making barely 60,000. Say, hey, let me try something else. So I tried a couple of things, went to SASD, and I noticed that some of my colleagues over there, because SASD is getting a grant from the teacher incentive allotment, and some of my colleagues, they were getting paid extra 15,000 every year. That's for 5 years. So after that experience, well, I went to work for a migrant shelter, being a teacher, teaching like those migrant kids coming into the United States, making a fabulous amount of money, not having to do any paperwork. And once that is finished, I say, what do I do? So I miss the kids. So I went to work with for your enemy, the competitor, a charter school, Idea Public School. Now, if you ask me why, those guys don't do a better job than my colleagues at Northside. Actually, my personal experience is that my colleagues at Northside do a far better job. They have far more experience, and they do care about the kids. While the other side, it seems they only care about the star results. But let me tell you, I'm still over there because I make almost 70,000 now. And I know a North-Star district, to make 70,000, I will have to have, what, 25, 30 years of experience? So when I had my interview for IDEA, I told them, say, look, guys, you need me more than I need you. And my feeling is next year, this coming year, you're going to have a massive teacher shortage, not only because there are so many opportunities, because unfortunately, we don't step up, and I don't know how you can do it, and that's the reason why I vote no for the bond, because until some of this money goes to teachers, I'm not into for Northside or any public district. Thanks.
Thank you.
Maria Mendoza.
Hi. I want to first thank you for all that you guys do for us. I am a teacher, a behavior mastery class teacher. Today I come before you to speak our truth as to why teachers and especially support staff deserve a raise, and to ask for proper district and community support and resources. This is reality based on work duties on our plates. A 5th grade teacher works 12-hour days, at least 4 days a week, to research-based, hands-on-based activities for her lesson plans. A 3rd grade teacher tutors on her own time for free due to her dedication to ensure growth in her students. An ECSE teacher starts her day before 7 a.m. with her own sleepy 4-year-old in tow. A 1st grade teacher has to cancel plans on the weekend to finish her reading academy hours. A BMC IA is left to work with BMC kids on her own because the teacher is on leave. A BMC teacher has been punched in the face 3 times, punched in the stomach twice, and fears the student may hurt innocent children. She thinks about the liability on her every time the student elopes from her classroom. These are only a few examples of teachers at only one school, but there are endless other examples throughout our whole school district. I am the BMC teacher on leave, and I think about my IA who's getting paid less than a fast food worker without a high school diploma every single day. My mental health is in shreds because of the guilt. And it's not my fault. Sorry. If you were to do the math on the amount of teachers work after hours, we would see that many teachers are getting paid about $24 an hour. That's based on a $58,000 a year salary, 50 hours a week. I didn't take summer into account, sorry. According to Supermarket News, Target is paying their employees $15 to $24 an hour. The reality is that the demands of teachers are growing due to our changing society. Although teachers are being compensated for the Reading Academy, the extra work hours adds a lot of stress to teachers. We need to do something before it gets worse. Many teachers are quitting and retiring early because it's not worth the mental and emotional stress due to unrealistic expectations. Sadly, we are still working pre-COVID and nothing has changed post-COVID. Yet, we are just starting to see the effects of what this pandemic has done to our students and teachers. And the worst is yet to come if nothing changes. From what I have seen this year, I can tell you that we are not equipped to deal with the mental health problems that our students are beginning to exhibit. We are teachers, not psychologists. We need to work with community organizations to help meet the mental health needs. Although Northside has a whole child department, teachers have not received adequate training or support to do and do not know how to use them as a resource.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, you need to wrap up here.
Okay, in conclusion, we need teachers for our society to keep moving forward. We need to advocate for more pay with realistic expectations and a 40-hour work week. Teachers alone cannot be asked to fulfill every role necessary to build positive citizens in society. It is exhausting and honestly impossible. Progress cannot be made without change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy Smith.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Woods. Before I start, thank you for the retention stipend. I and other teachers appreciate it. I'd also like to say I'm fully in support of the bond. I, like others, came to the teaching profession later in life. I am an Air Force vet and didn't start teaching until I was 43. My children all attended and graduated from Northside schools. I support my household with only my salary. I am now in my 18th year of teaching, and I'm planning on teaching for another 4 years until I turn 65. At that point, I will have 22 years of teaching, and I was fortunate enough to buy 5 retirement years because of my military service. That means when I retire, I'll receive approximately 62% of my 5-year average salary. When you didn't give teachers a raise in 2020, that affected my retirement. Given Dr. Wood's announcement in his newsletter about the lack of funding due to low attendance, and the comment that if the bond doesn't pass, you might dip into teachers' salaries to pay for expenses, I'm fearful that not only won't we get any sort of raise for next year, but we may possibly get a reduction in pay. That, too, will affect my retirement. If I'm lucky, I'll get about $3,000 a month in retirement. Of course, that'll be less if we don't get consistent raises. I will get very little Social Security, even though I qualify for it because I worked at other jobs before becoming a teacher. I'm not sure how I'll afford to retire, but I guess I can get another job. One thing I do know is that I won't keep teaching. Don't get me wrong. I love my job. I love my principal. She does as much as she can to relieve the stress. But every year, more and more is added to our plate, and nothing is taken off. The same year that you added time, essentially 6 days over the year, with no raise, you gave the superintendent a $1,000 a month stipend. We essentially took a $2,000 pay cut, but he gets $12K more. That was the year that I and other employees realized exactly how much you care about us. You care about us so much that you make us work over a week extra with no additional compensation, but try to pass it off as only a few minutes a day. You care about us so much you are essentially threatening to reduce our current salary or go years without a raise if the current bond proposal doesn't pass. You care about us so much that you're pressuring our principals to try to get us to vote, and I'm sure the pressure will trickle down to the teachers in some schools. It's very frustrating to be in our shoes. We don't get a raise, but Dr. Woods gets his stipend. We don't get a raise, but you expect us to work more hours. We don't get a raise, but we're expected to do what's best for the kids and never ourselves or our own families. Given that without the adults working in Northside, you wouldn't have schools, there's a question you should be asking yourself. When will teachers and staff reach the breaking point and decide to do what's best for ourselves and our family? The answer is that, for many of us, that'll be sooner rather than later. Northside used to be known to teachers as the promised land, not anymore. Thank you for your time.
Alexa Romero.
Hello, board. My name is Alexa Romero. My mother spoke to you all 1 month ago about our situation. Today, I would like to speak on my own behalf. I'm a student at Harlan High School, and I've been told that I need to go to a new school, while my older brother, a senior, will remain at Harlan next year. I can't even fathom this actually happening. My brother is one of the closest people in my life. He was the first friend that I ever had. We ride to school together every morning, and without fail, he will take me home too. Sometimes he even wakes up extra early to take me to practice, and he has stayed late to pick me up from numerous after-school practices. I know that the board has responded to my mom's request by saying our only concern is transportation issues. If that is what you think, then you are severely misinformed. This issue is purely about family and keeping mine together. You can't allow this to happen. I do not want to miss out on my brother's senior year of high school. I see him during passing periods. We even sit together at lunch sometimes. I grew up without a father figure in my life, and my big brother is like a rock to me. I turn to him for advice and a listening ear. He shares details with me about his day. We laugh and we spend time together. This time you will be robbing me of if you try to make me go to a different school. Why would you even think to do this? Families are supposed to be together. They are stronger when they are together. I assume that is why you made the decision to allow the O'Connor seniors and their younger siblings to stay together at the same school. I do wonder about that. Why are you allowing them to stay? It is pretty simple to me. If you have made the exception for those students at O'Connor, then you need to make the exception for students at Harlan. It is honestly the right thing to do, so please, I implore you to make the right decision. All seniors with younger siblings will stay together. Thank you.
Ms. Romero? Ms. Romero, just a comment. I know that this is not the first time that y'all have come to the board, and it's not on our board agenda, so we cannot discuss it. I know you've had multiple conversations with staff. My suggestion is if you want to pursue this, then to look at our grievance process. Thank you.
Ashley Haugen. Ashley, I apologize. I probably did not do that justice.
Oh, no, you got it. It's Haugen.
There you go.
Okay, when can I start? Okay. Thank you, board members, for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Ashley Haugen. I'm here today to formally ask that the board prohibit the use of water bead sensory toys and water bead guns on NISD campuses. I sent an email in March warning board members about the dangers of water beads. I appreciate that staff were informed, but parents want to partner with staff and the district to keep kids safe. But in order to do that effectively, direct action in sharing information is needed from the district to ensure harm does not occur. The Orbeez Challenge, which is what the water beads are also called, encourages teens to post videos of themselves on social media, targeting and firing water beads at young children, bystanders, and property. Teens participating in the Orbeez Challenge have been arrested and charged with a number of crimes, including but not limited to disorderly conduct, harassment, endangerment, and assault. These types of charges impact families financially and can derail a student's otherwise bright future. On Thursday, April 14th, 2022, I was waiting at Stevens High School for my older daughter to get out of soccer practice when I heard shots from behind my car. It is extremely unsettling to hear rounds firing off behind you while one child is sleeping in the back seat and the other is on the field where you see shooters moving towards. It was hard to tell at first, but when I figured out that the teens were using water bead guns and not traditional firearms, I called them over to me and I shared my daughter's story. In 2017, my baby was injured severely by water beads. We did not see her swallow any beads. She wasn't allowed to play with them. They were a gift for her older sister's birthday. Unbeknownst to my husband and I, the beads had collected inside of her GI tract. An emergency exploratory surgery is how we found out that she had the beads inside of her. That surgery saved her life, but non-toxic is a shockingly unregulated term. We later learned these so-called non-toxic beads can contain as a residual impurity a toxic chemical. As a result of the exposure, my daughter suffered a brain injury called toxic brain encephalopathy. After I told the boys about my daughter, they apologized for using the water beads guns on campus and were very respectful. Something they said to me that stood out was, "We didn't know the water beads could be so dangerous. We didn't know." To partner with parents and protect children's transparency is needed regarding potential safety threats and risks. Water beads can bounce like super balls, and when fired from these guns, they spray everywhere. Once dehydrated, they shrink down to the size of a pinhead. Sorry guys. But yeah, they've ended up causing lung injuries, hearing loss, facial surgeries, ear surgeries, abdominal surgeries, intestinal obstructions, seizures, brain injuries, and death. So I'm coming to you with a petition that's been signed by 380 individuals, including doctors, nurses, toxicologists, epidemiologists, and psychologists, inviting you guys to partner with us in support of formally prohibiting as a policy, the use of water beads as sensory toys and water bead guns on NISD district campuses.
Thank you. You may leave it with Monica, right, Ms. Guerrero?
Thank you.
Haroon Monis.
You're getting the full transcript. I probably will have to truncate it up here to meet the 3-minute guidelines, so. Right? All right. I'm a teacher. When I say those words after 20 years of teaching, I can still see the questioning looks that my family, friends, and even some strangers who learned a little about me gave me. I knew I wanted to teach before I even graduated college, but at a friend's suggestion, I went to UT's job fair for the Green Factor. Well, I ended up talking to a table, FBI table, who after hearing about me, offered me a job on the spot. This was the second time FBI tried to offer me a job. I turned them down. They pointed to another table that I should talk to. It seemed nondescript. I went there and I found out it was the CIA table. And after I told them about my background, they also offered me a job. And needless to say, I turned them down too. But they asked what I would be doing. I told them I would be a teacher. They asked what I would be earning my first year. This is 2001. I said 31,000. They laughed. They told me they could offer me 90,000 my first year, plus a 20,000 signing bonus. Needless to say, obviously I turned them down. So 20 years later, I haven't looked back. I like teaching because I like working with students and seeing them become great members of our society. But it is disheartening when a fellow teacher who leaves the profession and becomes a bartender tells me they earn more than me after 20 years, and they get thanked more on a daily basis with less stress. I'm here standing and speaking to you because my background has pushed me to be that way. As a kid, foreign kid from Afghanistan who didn't speak a word of English, at Rider Middle School in 1988 in 6th grade, I learned that unless you speak up, no one really can hear you. As a college student who became involved in student organizations, I learned that if you want change, you have to be the one who makes that change. You have to be at the forefront. And as a teacher, I learned that many people, mainly politicians, promise you the world, but give you nothing unless you fight for it. I fight for my education and public educators. That's why I'm here. I want my profession to be looked upon with esteem. I want at least to be paid what I deserve. The CIA thought, guys, 20 years ago, that I was worth $110,000. Surely, my district, the one where multicultural, multilingual teachers like me are sought after, can do better than pay me 60% of what CIA thought I was worth 20 years ago. Again, I'm a teacher, and I like being a teacher, but the sad lesson I've learned in the past 20 years is why I got the questioning looks from my family, friends, and strangers 20 years ago when they found out I wanted to be a teacher. Help me change that perception. Pay teachers what they're truly worth. I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Freeman, that closes citizens to be heard.
Okay. Thank y'all for being here. Y'all can stay here for the rest of our meeting, or you can leave if you'd like. It's truly up to you. It's an opportunity for you to leave. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. I'm sorry, Ms. Chumley, was that because of the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That was for that, Karen.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is under Facilities and Operations. Mr. Leroy San Miguel.
Ms. Freeman and members, we're going to pull item A under facilities. We need a little more time. We'll come back to the board at a later date. So we're going to move, with the board's permission, we'll move to item B under facility.
Item B, this, nope, got the wrong piece of paper here. This is for the master plan for Sol Ross. As some of the board members know, we have done various master plans throughout the district with various facilities to try to determine what the long-range capital improvement plan is for the facility. As a result of that, Jesse Garza with Garza Architects will be presenting to us the long-range plan and the short and the long-range plan for Ross Middle School.
Thank you, Leroy. Madam President, Board Trustees, Dr. Woods, and administrative staff, thank you for the opportunity to present Sol Ross Middle School Master Plan tonight. So very quickly, objectives for the master plan that we considered as we produced the plan for Sol Ross. So long-term planning for future bond projects obviously is a critical component, and also the strategic plan to try to achieve current NISD standards, because the facility goes back to the 60s, mid-60s or so. Also locally, just quickly, current challenges on this particular campus. Security, it is an open campus, so we try to develop more towards a contiguous plan. There's some drainage challenges, traffic flow, both from a vehicular and a pedestrian. Parking, serviceability, and as I mentioned earlier, the aging of the buildings is an issue. There's also a campus identity issue where the identity is not totally clear when you arrive at the campus, so that's something to consider. And then adjacency functions for the different departments and parts of the school that are critical to making the campus flow very effectively. Next slide. Just for quick reference, we're looking at about a 17-acre site at the corner of Callahan and Hemphill. And for reference, Sparza Elementary is down here across the street. Go ahead. Next slide. So currently, from a site plan standpoint, we've got about 75 spaces up at the front here and an additional 80. Quickly here, there's a difference of about 115 spaces shortfall from the current standards. So again, we are considerably smaller than near standards in terms of acreage. Next slide. And for reference on the historical development of these buildings, as I mentioned earlier, they go back to the 60s. So what you see here in orange are the original buildings, including the admin building, classroom building, which is here, cafeteria, gymnasium, some support functions here, and then everything you see in the teal color are subsequent additions and renovations that were done at the school to get it closer to the standards at those times. Next slide. So from a functional standpoint and distribution of those functions, as I mentioned earlier, this is the block where the original admin, which is in the light blue, library and support classrooms, and then the subsequent addition that was done in 2007 for science. That's included on that end, and then there's a two-story classroom building that's located here. This is actually the second level here. Across the, call it the student mall here, which is an exterior space, there is the cafeteria, the competition gym, and then the practice gym down below. These buildings here, or these functions here, are actually below this function here, which is some fine arts, and then, of course, that's part of the gym on the second story, and then some support career tech and art in that location. So that gives you an idea of the distribution of the functions currently. Next slide. Very quickly, not go into detail here, but what this matrix does for us is it allows us to study the deficiencies levels of each department as they go down here compared to the program for current students and existing area. And then more importantly is how the adjacencies of these different functions work, because the schools have been added to many times over the years, so adjacencies become more ad hoc. So what was very evident is that the adjacency issues between the fine arts, career tech, and athletics were probably the most efficient. Next slide. Just quickly, here's the entrance into the cafeteria. Sorry, my pointer's kind of going out here. There, and then subsequent photos at the drop-off area. Next slide. So from a vehicular pattern, in the light green is where there's drop-off that takes place. This is a student and visitor parking, not student parking, but student drop-off and visitor parking. And then you have bus traffic that's off of Hemphill Road, off that small parking there for bus traffic as well. Next slide.
Jesse, before you leave that side,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lopez has a question.
Yes, sir.
Hi,
Sorry.
Jesse, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain to me again what the poor status means again when it's minus 25%? What does that mean? That it has no...
Depending what the number is, if it's a negative number, it's a deficiency
Right, okay.
towards the program.
Purely based on square footage.
Just square
Purely based on
footage
square footage.
and then continuity, I guess, or wherever it's located in the...
That is an
on the
adjacency. That's the other matrix that we
Okay.
saw. Because a lot of times, when in a case like this, all the rooms are accounted for.
Right,
They're just from the 60s, so a lot of cases they're smaller.
right, right.
And
I
so,
mean, in
but
our
we do
current
check the box to
standards.
have the function, it's just not to the current standards. And then sometimes they're not next to each other, so that affects adjacency.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty, thank you, appreciate it.
And as mentioned in the first slide, drainage, you can see the different infrastructure that's been put in place to mitigate the drainage and help with that issue that's a problem on the campus. Next slide. Pedestrian traffic, as I mentioned earlier, it is an open campus, so there is circulation within the admin building and internally. You don't have one. Okay. And so leaving from the admin building over to the cafeteria, thank you, appreciate it. From the admin building over to the cafeteria, you have to go outside to this student mall here, as well as classroom. There's a bridge that goes over here. And then the gyms are also separated, so it is an open campus. In this 3D, you kind of see the topography. So there's a significant fall from the front of the property to the back, which kind of divides development possibilities, so which we'll talk about in a second. Next slide. So with that elevation and topography, we've got about a 40-foot fall on the back end here and about 16-foot here. So really what that tells us is that the optimum development areas are where the school's currently developed here, and then you have a 13-foot elevation change, and then this is where most of the athletic and site PE developments are in that lower area down there. Okay. So what we proposed here is that we look at this project from master plan perspective as a two development area. So we have the proposed development area on this side of the orange line where we're talking about, and then a future development area on this end here where the bulk of the classrooms are currently situated. Next slide. Next slide, please. So what we're proposing here is, which would be starting with the bond that's projected for the 2022 bond, would be to come in here and demolish the existing practice gym, the associated site work, and then there's a choir building in that location. And that'll allow us to, next slide, come in there and construct the two gymnasiums and the support locker room spaces, weight room, et cetera, in this particular location, while still maintaining that current one that sits in that location. Next slide. And then develop the associated parking that is needed to help us with the shortfall. which would be in this area. And the space is yet to be determined, but what we try to do is get as much as we can to close the gap. Obviously, a lot of this will be determined by actual needs on the campus. And then the fire lane to support the new built facility in this location. So what you see here under Phase 1C is really what culminates the bond project under 2022, which is gymnasium, locker rooms, and weight room, and et cetera. Next slide. So moving forward, under this area, which we stayed on this side of development, what made the most logical sense is to come in here and then demolish the existing cafeteria kitchen, which is located here, allowing us to use the existing gymnasium as the temporary child nutrition. So we can do temporary serving lines in here while we demolish this work, keeping in mind that we now have gym and lockers that the students get used during that phase. Next phase would be to go ahead and construct the cafeteria, increase the size with the kitchen and service roads to that. Next slide. And then we come in here and we demolish the old gymnasium. Next slide. And then we built a new central plant. Obviously, we're increasing size of facilities, so we need more infrastructure to support that. Once this is built, we'll demolish the old and then backfeed everything that needs to be fed to operate. Next slide. And then we start to add and construct the fine arts area here and demolish a building that currently has fine arts and career tech there. And then we complete that construction of the career tech on this end here. And that's pretty much what we're proposing. Now, that future development area is something that will be looked at a future date as the needs are defined. And so the focus is on that development side of the campus currently.
All right, Ms. Chumley?
Jesse, okay, so the Phase 1A is demo the gym, the parking lot, and the choir building,
Correct.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then Phase 1B, but that's still in the
go back.
2022 bond, is
Yes.
construct the gym's locker room.
Correct.
And where does the choir building go then?
Once these are built, we recall from building committee, we have the gymnasium available to us that we can pull some of those functions from the basement, if you want to call it that, or the lower level up into the gymnasium area. So
So what's underneath? I know that you've got some.
there's
fine
band
arts,
hall,
you've got some
orchestra.
band, orchestra.
Yes, those two functions.
The choir's
Choirs in that
outside.
separate building, yes,
So now we'll put them in the gym?
in the gym.
Well, we'll
And
put the
then
choir,
what will the gym look like
we'll
when we
put the
do that?
choir in there. We're gonna subdivide the gym, obviously, and do the minimal, because we don't wanna spend a lot of money for the long term, but we'll put the choir in where the gym is at, carve out some areas, for the choir room. And then, if there's other opportunities to enhance the fine arts, we could certainly consider it at that time.
Or possibly could we move the fine arts up in that area and get it out of the dungeon?
We may be able to do that, but honestly, when we looked at,
Space?
Yeah, remember.
but also the budget.
Yeah, remember, well, it is a budget issue, but also remember that gym space is going to be our temporary child nutrition feeding space. So it's not going to be available to purely subdivide into classroom locations.
Except that we're not, we're not gonna be doing anything on the cafeteria though at that point, Brian.
That's-
the next,
Not
that's the
that
next,
time.
the next
That's the
bond.
next one, right.
So,
But there will come a phase where, I just want to caution that there will come a phase where that gym, it's post this bond proposal, of course, will have to be used as essentially a cafeteria, an eating area for students.
So if we do too much in relation to the classroom.
Then
and
you
investing
won't
too much
have
in it,
enough.
Hopefully.
You
know,
won't have enough space.
Yeah, we're gonna be redoing
So,
that.
so we'll just have to, what we wouldn't want to do is move them and then move them again if we could avoid it. So it becomes a phasing issue. We'll deal with that really more at schematic. This is really just about, can we get done what we need to get done in the spaces that we have, which on a campus of this vintage is tough because the acreage is relatively small.
Is there dance on this campus?
Mhm.
And where is it?
In the proposed, it's in the fine arts area.
Where is it now?
It's where the computer Yeah,
Probably repurposed. When we went to one-to-one devices for obvious reasons, we went at our middle schools from 2 large computer labs down to only 1 being required, and many of them repurposed that space.
To that. Okay, so let me just share with the rest of the board. What we're talking about within this is taking a large amount of the green space off of that campus for parking spaces. So the guide now is 270 parking spaces, but they are managing, without seeming to be an issue, with the parking spaces they have right now, because the staff parks at the parking lot closer to Hemphill. So the discussion in building committee, and I want to make sure that we have that in the minutes for this, is that we're not necessarily going to turn that whole green space into parking lot if it is not needed. And this campus has an extremely engaged principal and community. And so the discussion was, and the agreement was, with Leroy, with you and Dr. Woods, was that we would look to see what exactly was needed, and if the campus is using that green space, not get rid of it. So I just want to make sure that we have that, because that was what was discussed at building committee, is we're not necessarily going to turn green space into asphalt unless it's needed at the campus.
Agreed.
Okay, and then I just want to make sure, so when we're looking at this, and Leroy and I had talked about kind of the process. So the principal has seen this, agrees with it, supports it, and this is the order, and he agrees with what we're doing here. And does athletics with Stan or any of the assistants, ADs, look at this at all, or is that when we get into
Schematic.
the schematic?
It'll be at schematic.
Okay, but Mr. Ortega has seen this and agrees with it. Okay, thank you. I think it's great. I love
Good.
to see that we're doing this. I just wish that we could, can we add enough money to include the fine arts area with what we're doing now?
Yeah.
Because that area really, it is very lacking from what we have in, the Strausses and Burnells of the world on it. So, but I think this is a really great start.
Good.
And I move approval.
Okay. So we have a motion and approval to approve the master plan at Sol Ross?
I had
Yes,
a
ma'am.
question.
Dr. Hall?
Real quick question. So is it and I may have missed it, is it a matter of money that fine arts isn't being attended to at the first phase, or is it where we're moving kids and learning spaces?
Both. We could not, we actually looked, Jesse priced out for us what more of the phases would be, and we just could not get it in this bond,
Okay.
given the other work that we felt like we needed to get done. But we wanted to start with something rather than just ignore a campus built in the 60s completely.
But there won't be any fine arts program cut or suspended in any way. It'll just be
No.
relocated into some sort of other space?
Right, just like it would be in any other major renovation project.
And then the other question I had, and since you brought it up, Melissa, has Mr. Ortega, because it sounded like, and I didn't get to go to building committee, that the green area was going to house a lot more parking than really is needed. Is there a conversation about how that green space could be actualized by the students and the teachers as far as community gardens? I mean, we have other schools that are struggling to have green space, and we're building above ground beds, but yet all this space, and we know it's so good for middle schoolers to be in outdoor programs, so.
I think that one of the, because of the building committee commentary about the utilization of green spaces and parking lots, that obviously we're not ready to propose anything at this point in time, because this is just an overall master plan. However, when we get to the point where we energize the project, so to speak, through schematic design, that's when we get a little bit deeper and try to ask those questions or probing questions about utilization of green spaces and things of that nature. I know they have gardens because I visited with
Yeah,
the
they do.
principal. They have them right up the
They
corner
do.
in there.
They do.
And they
You
have,
can never have too many gardens, so
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, so they'll be pulled into that discussion?
Absolutely.
They're not
The-
waiting for us to say, what-
no.
okay.
There's still a lot more detail that we talked at building committee that we really need to, address. So once we get into the schematics, then that's the time to really bring all of this forward and address as many of these as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you, thanks.
Mr. Blunt?
Yeah, and I was going to assume not to give you more challenges, but when you do have that discussion, I assume it's going to be looking at the field space also for athletics, since this only has the one field, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so that may be, hopefully, if we get to the others, we get 2 fields or baseball or something along those lines, but,
Correct.
okay. Good, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blunt. Anyone else?
That's what they're using water.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the master plan at Sol Ross. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is under business and finance. Dr. Barajas?
Yes, ma'am. We're asking for approval to engage our current external auditor, Weaver, for one more audit for the year that we are currently in, ending August 31st of '22.
Okay. The engagement letter is attached, if you'd like to review. Anything different in the engagement letter than we've had in the past?
No, initially, with the new group that I'm working with, myself included, we thought that there was a 5-year deal with Weaver, but unfortunately, it was only 4. So the last audit they completed was the last one. So rather than go out for a request for qualifications, we're asking the board for approval to use them for 1 more year. And this time next year, actually in less than a year, we will put out a formal request for qualifications for audit services for a period of up to 5 years.
Okay.
There is no increase in fee.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lopez?
I'm sorry. I was going to make a move for approval for the Weaver as our, as our audit services.
Okay, Ms. Chumley?
So the reason that we're not doing an RFP is just our,
Timing issue. Yeah, when we could put one out, but by the time we get the responses back and come back to the board for approval, we may be into early summer, and that's normally when the time that our external auditor is here doing interim work during the summer.
and we just thought that it was 5 years and found
That's
out
correct.
that it was
Yeah.
4. And Renee, I'm not sure if, so let me ask, because I'm remembering something about an issue that we had during an audit process. And was this the company that we had that issue with?
This is the company that we went to after we left the company that we had that issue with.
Okay, I could not remember, Brian, and I just wanted to make sure on that. That was it.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. So we have a motion to approve the engagement letter regarding Weaver?
Do you need a second?
Yes.
Second.
And I had a question
Oh,
again.
yes, ma'am.
Sorry, is it not?
I don't have a light, but that's
Okay.
okay.
So I had a real quick question. So since their contract is up in this year 4, we don't have to go out on an RFP?
RFQ.
I mean RFQ?
No, no.
Sorry.
Auditors,
Why?
architects, attorneys, I always call them the 3 A's. Under law, the district does not have to issue any kind of formal request for qualifications. In this case, you wouldn't do a request for proposal. So given the fact that they have demonstrated their competence.
Sure.
And the fact that we know that they're not going up in fee, which is the fee is fair and reasonable, the board has the ability to go ahead and consider them.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And technically, that would be true in a year 6 and a year 7 and so forth. It's just been our practice every 5 years to go out for RFQ and see what's out there, see see what the market has. Even if we're happy with the service that we're getting.
It's not uncommon for a district to change audit firms every 5 years just to keep that appearance of independence that you're not with the same auditor for 20 or 25 years. So, again, as Dr. Wood said, even if you're happy with them, they understand that's the game, and they're like, well, we had you for 5 years, we'll see you in 5 years, that kind of thing.
The one thing I will say, though, is even within the 5 years, most of the audit firms, and certainly the ones we use, change the managing partner that's working on the account. So that while the firm may be the same, the humans working on the account do shift. Not every year, but every couple of years?
Well, it depends. For instance, let's say that a district went out for RFQ and decided that, you know what, the firm we are currently using is, in our opinion, the best firm out there. We would then request that we get a different partner. So it's a different set of eyes from looking at the district. So that's very common as well. So.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you, and you have the next item, Dr. Barajas.
Yes, ma'am. Because the agreement, the term of agreement with our current financial advisory company, Hilltop, was expiring, we decided it was in our best interest to go out for RFQ. So we did that. Committee was convened, we reviewed the responses that were received, and we are asking the board to approve the ranking that the committee came up with after reviewing their qualifications. Upon approval of the ranking, then administration will then start to negotiate with the highest ranked firm to come to an agreement, and we'll be done.
Okay. Any questions? Is there a motion?
Can you remind me who it is now?
We are currently using Hilltop.
And have we ever used Frost before?
As a financial advisor, not to my knowledge, no.
Nor to mine.
And so with this ranking though, we're looking at,
Where'd you go?
is there a situation where we would end up using someone who is not the number one ranked?
Only if we could not come to an agreement with the number one ranked. And then this allows us then, for instance, so the number one ranked, we would start to negotiate for a contract. And if we found that they were not amenable to our requests or that their fee was going to be outside of what we consider to be fair and reasonable, we would simply send a letter to them saying, we are ceasing negotiations with you, and then we would move on to number two. So what this obviates the need for is for us to, for instance, recommend Acme, and then we start to negotiate with them and things fall apart. Then we'd have to go back, come to the board with another recommendation to go to number two. So by having the board approve the ranking, it gives us that flexibility in the event that, unlikely event that the first ranked firm doesn't want to comply with our request, or that their fee is exorbitant and not fair and reasonable, then we go to number two.
So does this come back to the board once a fee in a contract is established?
It wouldn't have to. We can certainly do that. In this case, I think the likelihood of a change is highly, of a likelihood of moving away from ranked number one is highly unlikely.
I would like it to come back to the board if there is a change in the fee from what we're doing. If there's a change from the contract that we have now, I would like that to come back.
And there may be, I mean, the contract we're using, it goes back to the early 2000s that has the ability to keep on continuing for another 2-year period, but that ran out, unfortunately. So that's why we went out for a request for qualification. So I imagine that there may be some small changes in the fee structure.
Just particularly since it's been so long, it would just like, I would like to know what that change is on it.
Okay. So the ask here is to approve the ranking.
That is correct.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the ranking for the financial advisory services.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. And next item.
All the stuff I said
Arbitrage.
about FA services applies to arbitrage compliance services. It's another kind of service that districts, well, you actually need this kind of service because it is a very complicated calculation to go in and determine what arbitrage, whether or not you're going to owe any money back to the IRS. So in this case, we're asking for the the administration or the board to approve the ranking, which there's only one. As you can tell, there are not a lot of people in this space. So if you approve the ranking, then again, we'll move forward with this and bring it back if there's any kind of change in the contract.
And this is who we're using now?
That is correct.
And it expires May 31st?
I believe it's May 31st, yes.
Okay. Anyone? Okay, is there a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the ranking of firms for arbitrage. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And then we go to another category, human resources.
I do
Miss-
have one more question as
Oh,
Patty's walking up.
sure.
So is this the standard time frame that you usually have when you go out on an RFQ?
No, it
or
just happened to be that,
administrative?
it just happened to be that these two agreements were ending, one in late April, the other in May.
And
That's
so
it.
what is the normal, so what would be the normal time frame that you would look at when we have a contract ending to go out for an RFQ?
Well, depends on what kind of, we look at the board calendar. The world revolves unfortunately around a board calendar. When do we want to get this to the board for them to approve so we can have an agreement in place? And in this case, it was just whenever that particular agreement happens to end. So if it's in January, then we'd be probably bringing this in November, a couple of months before when the agreement ends, so.
Okay. And do you think that, would there have been any difference in the number of companies that answered the arbitrage?
No.
If we had had more time?
Nope, not at all. Arbitrage, I think, is a French term which means complicated. So there's nobody in this space really who wants to come in and do this. So again, we put it out there. One responded. That was it. So it had nothing to do with people saying, because the other companies that responded to the FA, for instance, they did not want to touch the arbitrage. It's a very specialized type of work. So
Okay, I just didn't know, because I know like on some of the other RFQs that it takes time for the companies that are responding to it to build, that response or what they're going to offer. And so that's why I was just curious.
no, we always give
you
them
know,
ample
if-
time.
If that was, if that would have made a difference.
No.
Great, thank you.
Miss
All
Miss
right.
Hill.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Through the work of our resource planning department and our growth and improvement process, we have identified the need to add 183 campus-based units or staff members in order to staff our newest high school, Sotomayor, that opens in the fall, and to begin our new magnet school programs at the middle school. We also need to add staff to continue district initiatives such as the expansion of the elementary STEM labs, the pre-K expansion, as well as various other programs through the district. These new positions include teachers, counselors, librarian, a nurse, instructional assistants, administrators, and other campus-based support staff like police officers, special ed and 504 staff, secretaries, and custodial staff. There is a detailed spreadsheet attached to this agenda item, and the number of units requested is exactly the same as you saw at the April 12th called board meeting. So that my department, Human Resources, can get a jump on the competition, we are requesting approval for the campus-based units at this time.
Okay. Ms. Chumley, was that from
Yeah,
before?
I wanted to move approval of this allocation. And then Patty, I wanted to ask, is the career and military advisor, that would be like the sergeant major at John Jay? Is that, what is?
That's the old Career Center
Oh, the career merit.
position, if I'm right. I
Yeah,
think.
you are.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a position we've had for, my gosh,
we've
in
had
some
that
form or another for decades.
Changed the title. In some ways, we've changed the qualifications and the services that are there.
So that's.
but that's
but
not-
That was a paraprofessional for a while.
And now as a profession.
Yes.
Now as a professional? Okay.
Yes.
And so, how do we go about for the ROTC? Because I know that he's retiring, and I'm worried about us being able to replace him.
We,
So how does that work?
We actually have to post that through, in that case, the Air Force, because it's obviously an Air Force unit.
Yeah.
They advertise it to retired or retiring members of the organization. They send us a list, and then Patty's staff and the campus decide.
And at what point do we, I'm worried about us being able to get someone to replace him. I mean, you're not going to be able to replace him because he's fabulous anyway.
It's
But
it's
the
an issue.
Time-wise, I'm just wondering.
We have struggled. For instance, we have a vacancy. I want to say at Clark, and while we hired a person who's a current ROTC instructor from another city, they have yet to be able to replace him, and so we're still hanging on with a vacancy in that spot. That kind of stuff is happening, but we will post that a known position like the one you mentioned ASAP. Right, as soon as we know about it. We can post it with the Air Force, or in the case of a Navy unit, it would be via the Navy.
Okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't sure.
No.
That title changed
It has,
on that.
in a good way.
Yeah. Okay, so I move approval.
I have a question. Patty, what are newcomer teachers and newcomer instruction assistants?
Those are for the students that are coming from outside of America, from, the refugees that are coming and don't speak the languages and stuff. The newcomer teachers work with those students and families and the instructional assistants in the program.
Like at Glen Oaks.
Yeah, yeah,
Colonies North.
And Meade and Colonies, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
refugee children.
Okay, anyone else?
Which is obviously a growing population.
Yes, I know.
Okay, is there a motion?
Well,
Already have one.
I moved approval, but I don't know if you have a second.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the campus-based growth and improvement units. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Helen.
Thank you.
Patty, before you leave, are we doing, I remember, I can't remember how many years ago, where we would have groups, principal and other, and some HR person go to, teacher fairs. Like, I know we had a whole contingent of teachers that came in from Iowa and another set that came in, I think, from Indiana, Illinois. Are we doing that?
We haven't been traveling out of state, especially for the past couple of years, but we do go to several job fairs. These past 5 weeks, we've been at job fairs every single week, and we're actually hosting a Title I job fair of our own on May the 7th.
Is there some benefit for Brian for us to allocate travel for that?
Perhaps. What we had back in that day was a university that had a very well coordinated program where young people were actually coming here for the purpose of student teaching and then staying on. That we don't have a relationship like that right now. Now, that said, we have tried to recultivate some relationships. Patty's group has tried to recultivate some relationships like that, because there are parts of the country that are still, we see the most recent census data where populations are declining. And so those young people who are graduating with the thought of being a teacher see that, and there's also very low pay in some of those states. And so they might be willing, but it takes more than just kind of going to recruiting. It's really much more coordinated effort than that.
I didn't realize that.
The last.
But can we start looking at
Yeah, we've had that conversation.
We have. We've looked into it, tried to cultivate that, as Brian has said, and just haven't really found the hotbed yet of where it's a match.
Right. Is there anything that the board can do to help support that?
It would be a budget item, obviously. It would take, not only, again, it's not just about travel, it's about true coordination all the way through the pipeline. And that takes humans, right? Because that has to be coordinated with on the university side as well as on our side, as it was 20 or 25 years ago when we were doing that.
It would be
With
worthwhile
Iowa,
to-
they actually had a person here that coordinated, found a place for the kids to live, coordinated with the district and stayed here, kind of like a den mother, so to speak.
Yeah, so which is why a lot of them stayed. They had local support,
Support,
right?
they
Weren't counting on somebody 1,000 miles away. So anyway, we've coordinated. Yeah, there you go. So we got lots of those folks. So mostly of that kind of experience level, right? Because that program did eventually go away, but
just
yeah,
would
really back then, extremely successful. And we got, frankly, some folks,
Some great teachers.
some great teachers who, many of whom have now gone on to leadership roles. I mean, we have benefited tremendously from that program.
Yeah.
But again, it's not just about going to a job fair. It's much more complex than that.
Oh.
And if we were to develop a relationship with one of those schools, we would have to try to find the money and then come to the board and amend the budget to do it. Right?
I would really like to have us really start looking,
We've
for
been
that.
talking about it.
Brian, because I think we're going to need it.
Yeah, we've been trying every out of the box thought we can think. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we vote?
I don't know if we
got-
voted or
I don't-
not.
I don't know.
but
Did
I
we
know
vote?
I know we have a motion and a
And
second. Let's just
Let's
do it again, just in case.
Yeah, Monica, do you have
did,
us?
I have it.
Do
You
you
did.
have
Oh,
us
okay.
as vote? Okay.
Good thing
Right.
Monica's paying attention. Okay.
Thank you
Yeah,
for that.
Thank you.
Okay, purchase of buses. Mr.
So
Galindo?
typically, yeah,
we did,
Monica's got the
actually.
record of the vote.
We actually did.
Yeah, all of us had that issue happen simultaneously. It's amazing how that works. So normally we would bring purchases on consent. However, purchase of buses tends to be one that we bring for a more somewhat larger discussion. It is a fairly large number. Mr. Galindo will go into some of why that is. Obviously, there have been substantial manufacturing delays in the last 2 years that caused the orders we would have made to back up in the system. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ray.
Yes, sir. So as Dr. Wood said, we are bringing a request to purchase 90 vehicles, 65 diesel full-size buses, and 25 multi-use or mini buses that you're used to seeing, the yellow ones. We have, in the last 6 or 9 months, we were debating whether to bring a purchase forward, but because, as Dr. Wood says, manufacturing production of buses, we weren't able to, and even now, I think there'll be a delay, but we figure we need to get on the list. We started bringing these to you actually with Senate Bill 693, which started with seatbelts. And so, we continue to recommend that we do purchase them with seatbelts. We continue to do that and think effectively implemented that whole use of the belts. Buses also, of course, have GPS now. We're looking into that as well as cameras and air conditioning. Proud to say that our special ed buses, 100% of our fleet now is air conditioned, and we're about up to 30% of our total fleet, that general ed buses, the full buses that are also with air conditioning. And as you know, that initiative started a couple of bonds ago as well. So the number that you see there is a little on the higher end, again, because of the number of vehicles. And really what would happen because of the delay in manufacturing and production really doubled up, I guess you could say, on the purchase. So again, the request then is to move forward with the purchase of those 90 vehicles, get on the list, and hopefully get them within 6 to 9 months, I believe, is when we hope to receive them.
Ray, can you talk about why diesel and not propane in this instance?
What we do is we cycle out our buses, and turns out in this cycle we had more of the diesel than we did the actual propane. We've also, just in recent years, in terms of travel, have to rely more on the diesel buses than propane. You don't have a lot of propane stations. And because of all of the, believe it or not, shortage of drivers in general, not just with public schools, but just charters, we've actually had to send our yellow dogs out to Austin, to Del Rio, to Houston, to Dallas. And so when we do that, and obviously we're sending our newer air-conditioned buses, but we need to have them be diesel buses so that we can stop on the way and fuel up.
You've got to be able to refuel.
So that's added too, and we again will continue to monitor. And we still have a fair amount that are propane. However, this purchase in particular are all diesel buses.
Are we going to be looking at maintaining and purchasing additional propane at, I mean, because I thought that we saw savings, and particularly with the diesel prices are right now. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, it is a savings. To be honest, the last 2 years, that savings has narrowed some and then widened some and so forth if you pay attention to those markets. But very likely the bulk of what you would see in a future purchase, including what's proposed in 2022, that'll be more of a propane cycle. You go back to that.
Because there's the environmental piece of it, too.
There is.
Yes.
On
There
that.
is. And it works great if you're driving regular routes.
Right.
But as Ray said, and we started to see in the fall when kids were back in classes, and of course we were sending them to competitions
Yeah,
and
you can't-
contests and whatever they
you can't
qualified
use
for,
propane.
and you can't use propane. It puts the kids and the drivers in a really bad potential situation.
So the last set of buses, so the newest buses we have now, who did we buy them from?
As far as the manufacturer,
Well, just,
is the maker of the engine. Yeah.
okay, because my understanding that we have quite a few of our buses that are in maintenance under the manufacturer's warranty.
That's true, but there's also a lack of parts for them to be repaired.
We
But
do
it's
have,
enough, I mean, it's enough of an issue that we have, so I guess my question is, if it's a lack of parts, I understand that. However, these are brand-new buses, so why would we be needing new parts on brand-new buses?
So those were unleaded buses and propane buses, and so the diesel buses have been proven to be more reliable for us, and that was another reason why we're going with the diesel purchase.
That still is the question, though. We have brand-new buses. My understanding, they're new buses, and there's a lot of them, it's my understanding, that are in the shop. Why would they be in the shop if they're brand-new buses?
I,
Some recalls, and we have been meeting with the local distributor, or not distributor, but the local repair shops that are working with them. There was 27, I think we've gotten it down to about 15 buses.
It's made,
it
has made a big impact on our drivers. And so, Ray, I'm hesitant on this. These were brand-new buses.
If I may, I think what you're referring to, Ms. Chumley, and Tessie can elaborate a little bit more. We did have a cycle that we bought Thomas buses, and so that was a purchase we did. We piloted them. It didn't go well, and those were perhaps the buses you may have heard that quickly ended up, even under the manufacturer's warranty, in the shop. The Internationals, what we've gone back and have used for years. And so this, as you heard Ms. Garza, this is we're back to International, which that our mechanics are used to fixing them and are more familiar with the parts and the whatever issues there may be. So that I think what you're hearing or what that was in terms of new buses that ended up in the shop was the Thomas experience is what we're calling it.
And we changed
Yes.
manufacturers because?
No, we piloted, and I'm not sure how many we bought at the time. Yeah, so we had 10 of those out there that we decided not to go with afterwards.
And that was, I think that's my big thing, is that, and I'll tell you, it's, so what's happening is, my understanding, is that the buses are down, our mechanics are driving routes because, so it's just exacerbating the problem of getting them back. So
We
I just want to make sure that we're not buying from the same people, that these are not the same manufacturer on these buses as the ones that are not working. And then at some point, I'd really like to know the status of how many are out and when will they be back
we can do that.
on that. Just, everything goes around. I just want to make sure we're not doing that with this group. So then I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the purchase of the buses as discussed. Any other question All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Galindo. And
Thank you.
Dr. Woods, future agenda items.
Yes, ma'am. In your blue folder, as per tradition, you've got a list of items we're carrying for May 17. It's unclear whether all those items will remain on that agenda, but obviously we'll hang on to them until we know otherwise. Just to get on folks' calendar, and I believe it's on the board calendar, the Agriculture, Science, and Technology Academy had rescheduled their banquet and awards, and it's now sitting on May the 19th. And so, I believe that's correct in the board calendar. Yes, Monica, can you verify?
Yes, I don't know if I've had it on there until I got the invitation.
Okay, got it.
But yes.
All right.
And then there's,
Just wanted to be clear about that.
and Monica, can you verify, it's my understanding that there are invites to Pat Neff's Fine Arts program for May 3rd? Do you have those?
I do not have any invites from them
Okay,
yet.
they're thinking that you do.
That does not ring a bell to me either.
Yeah, so do you mind checking with Pat Neff tomorrow? But I was there and they had asked if we had gotten them, and I said it would probably be
Did
that
they
we would
send
get
them
them
through Pony, did they say?
now. I didn't ask.
Okay.
But,
If they did, sometimes Pony's picked up on different days of the week at campuses.
okay.
So maybe.
Since
hasn't
it's
gotten
next
to
week, I just wanted to make sure that,
Because I have it on my calendar. Dinner and show at Pat Neff.
Oh, is that what it is, the dinner and show? It wasn't I thought you were talking about a hand-delivered card. We did get an email, and so that went out on the board calendar.
okay, and I must have missed that, because I'm trying to keep up with you, because you were helping me. So, okay, well,
Okay,
good.
if
Then
that's what that one
just-
is, then yes, that was an email invite.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because they had asked to make sure that the board knew about it.
They were asking for a head count. I think that's one of those emails and texts I sent out stating, please check your emails for actions required. Yeah.
Okay, well, then I'm behind an action email too, so,
I have it.
action check. Yep.
It's not on yours.
It's not on mine, and that's probably because I have
But
another.
you have something
I have
going
a commitment at Jones Magnet School that night.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Is it, any additional,
No, ma'am.
Dr. Woods? Okay. All right. The Board of Trustees on April 26, 2022, beginning at, let's take a 10-minute recess. 8:20. We'll convene in closed meeting in accordance with Texas Government Code Section 551.071, 551.072, 73, 74, 76, 82, and 84. Thank y'all.
But just so that everybody's aware, Karen Freeman, President Karen Freeman had to leave. She wasn't feeling good, so she went ahead and left early and asked me to fill in for this spot. So we're going to go ahead and finish this. The Board of Trustees is, on April 26th, we're reconvening for this meeting. It is 8:52 in open meeting. The items on the agenda next that we were discussing is number 1, which is, I'm sorry, sites. If I can have a motion.
I move that we accept the recommendation.
Well, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, that would be that would be the sites.
I move that-
I'm sorry, that was my fault.
No, that's right. I move that the following resolution be approved and adopted by this board. Resolved that the superintendent or his designee is hereby authorized to execute an earnest money contract and all relating closing documents to effect the purchase by the district of approximately 18 acres specifically identified during executive session for the consideration specified during executive session and on such other terms and conditions with the superintendent deems to be in the best interest of the district in his sole discretion.
I second.
So we have a motion and then we have a second. Any further discussions? If none at all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The ayes have it, the motion carries. We're going to go ahead and go to administration. On this one, Brian, do we just go ahead and make one big motion for A through E?
That's been the
Is
board's
that
practice,
typical?
but that's
okay?
obviously, that's obviously up to the board, yeah.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and make one big motion for the, for items A through E. If I can have a motion for that, for the appointment.
Well,
of-
I move approval of the appointments as discussed in closed session.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
And then I move approval of
So
a
that's,
consideration, I move approval of the recommendation made concerning professional educator contracts in closed session. As discussed in closed session.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Second, the second one?
That, actually, the only item.
Oh, that's the only one,
that
I'm
was
sorry.
The only one under that item. The other was discussion only.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
these are all the items.
Just leaving these, right?
I'm sorry?
We're leaving these?
You sure you
Yes,
don't
we're
need
leaving
someone
our
to
thing.
follow you?
Please leave those.
Sure? Yeah.
Will, the tech is here, they're gonna collect them, or maybe Monica?
You're either gonna collect them tonight or first thing in the morning.
And then, as soon as they're ready, we'll send something out saying they are, and if you're by here, great, if not, we'll figure out another way to get them.
Okay, the meeting is now convened, is over at 8:55. Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.